Hey everybody, we are live and Tana is hopping in here really quick. So we'll wait a few seconds for her, but let's go ahead and get started. So welcome to Seller Hotline with PPC Farm. Tana Cofer of Rosie is going to be joining us very shortly, and we'll get to answering all of your questions. So you are welcome to ask us anything. That is the whole purpose of this live, and anything related to Amazon ads, of course, especially inventory, operations, all of it. We are here to help. All right, Tana's here, so I'm going to have her jump in. Hey, Tana.
Woo! Hey. Oh, my
All
water
right,
bottle.
so thanks so much for joining me. Tell
Of
everybody a
course.
little bit about yourself and what you do and how you got started in Amazon and all that good stuff.
Heck yeah. So, hi, my name is Tana. Um, I have been doing Amazon stuff since 2017, which actually I think makes me an OG at this point. I was the first advertising hire at a company called Pattern that a lot of people know of today. They at the time were called iServe, and I worked in a warehouse that was 95 degrees with a swamp cooler. So they were like this big here in Little Utah, and I was there learning the Amazon world and scaling brands, managing mostly advertising, became director of ads, and was there until the end of 2022 when I decided I wanted to work with smaller to medium sized brands. You know, we grew so fast. We started working with these massive companies, which was amazing, with these like unlimited budgets, which is super fun. However, I just knew like in my gut, like I want to help smaller businesses. Like I want to make the $5,000 a month budgets like really help a brand as opposed to the ones that are like, yeah, spend whatever and you have unlimited, which was amazing. But I just felt like my impact was this big. And so I made that jump, and I've helped brands launch on Amazon, get to their first million to five, and it just it warms my heart. It's so exciting. So that's what I do at Rosie. Me and a team of other experts, ex-agency, ex-business owners, are helping brands scale on Amazon, and we do Walmart and other channels too. But
Amazing. Yeah,
that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, I love that story so much, especially like you said, it's one thing to be able to grow a brand that's already huge, but it's a whole nother game to help the small guys get to their first million. I mean, that's huge.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that some people, come in and they're like, wow, but you were working with such cool brands. And it's like, yes, but I was one of hundreds that they were thinking about their team, their channels. Like I was just one of so many. And it's one of those like those cliche things like small fish in a big pond, right? Big fish in a small pond. And I wanted to make a bigger impact and be way more involved. I wanted to talk to the brand daily. I actually wanted that over communication, as opposed to just like the 1 30-minute meeting a month that you got, right?
Yeah.
That's not what I was looking for. And then, yeah, so the options are you go in-house somewhere or you kind of build your own thing. So I decided to build my own thing.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And you guys are full service, right? I mean, you handle everything for your brands, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're full service. Like I had a call just earlier today of a brand had a product idea and I'm like, okay, how can we help you make that product idea get to your first million on Amazon? Let's go. So
that's so cool. And then you really get to build it from the ground up, like you said, it's super rewarding. That's amazing.
And just being a part of, being a part of the story, like the brand growth and that story, and is really fun. Now we of course work with brands who are already doing 5, 10, 15 million on the platform as well. Absolutely. And we'll manage their budgets, their growth. We're often actually a lot of brands is third or fourth agency, right? That they've gone through, and then they come to us and we're a model that's a little more unique. We can cater to them a little bit better. And so I mean we're not very big. We haven't been around very long, but so far it's a strategy that's worked out really well for us. We've seen a lot of growth. So we're going to keep doing that.
Amazing. Yeah, I think it's, especially now we've been getting clients as well saying like, I was at the bigger agencies and I just sort of felt like a number, which, I mean, I get it from the agency side, why you need to operate that way. But if you are a brand that's looking for something that's more on the boutique side where you get someone really hands-on, especially with with you guys where you are doing full service, I mean, it's just a whole different, relationship.
Whole different ball game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like our calls can't be 30 minutes just going over, just going over ads or just going over listing management. It's okay. Well, here's the creative mock-ups. What are your thoughts on those? Here are the titles. Here's the ad pivots we've made. Here's your influencer pool we've gathered. Like it's so much more. And I think it makes us a part of it. We're literally a part of their marketing team. Like we're a part of the growth. And it also has made it so we grow channels very quickly with brands. Like they add on more pretty fast because they're like, we trust you and you're doing so much, which is great. But I mean, it's also benefit with you and being like siloed and like basically just doing ads. Like you can really every day be like in the weeds. You see the updates faster than I can, for example. Like there's a lot of benefit in being at a company, being with a partner like you guys as well.
Yeah, for sure. And, I mean, I think while we specialize in PPC, like we can't really do it in a vacuum. We are definitely consulting on like, hey, we're struggling with conversion. I think let's redo your main images. And like, while we're not going to do their graphic design for them, we're absolutely giving them that advice because I mean, one hand really washes the other, and the better their listings and all of that, the better that our ads are going to perform. So absolutely.
Totally. Yeah. That's why, I mean, I was director of ads. Like that's kind of my main focus. That's what I started doing freelance when I left. And then within a couple of months, I realized like, man, I can't just be a part of this. I have to give advice on the other stuff. And then when it wasn't moving forward with some brands, because they're just like strapped, they just couldn't get to the creative this month or like whatever. It was like, well, then let me just pay me a little bit more. And I'm just going to do it. Like, I want the ads to work better. So let me just do it. It's kind of like my mentality. And so then I just took on more than I could chew, hired people, and here we are.
Here we are. I love it. That's amazing. Very cool. Okay. Well, we're still waiting for some comments to come through. There's usually like a little bit of a delay with when they show up on my end and when people are actually commenting in there, but we have almost 40 people signed up for the event today. So I'm expecting it to be a really good one. Everybody, like I said, go ahead and start popping your questions in. Anything related to ads, inventory management, operations, Tana obviously knows a little bit of everything, right? I think we both do. So feel free to start dropping those comments in. And all right. So here we've got first one here from Brittany. What are some red flags and green flags people should look out for with an agency to help with PPC or when they're shopping around for an agency?
That's a good question. Do you want to answer first?
So I'll let you lead on all these questions because you're sort of the star of the show here a little bit. Yeah. So I'll let you lead and I'll follow up with any other like little tidbits I might have. But yeah, you go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I would say red flags that I would say are red flags are someone who is willing to sign with you without actually looking at the account or downloading reports, because at least me, and I'm sure that you're the same way, is I want to work with brands who I've already looked at everything. I know their numbers. I know how I'm going to grow them. I already kind of dug in. I get excited. If you hop on a call with a agency and they're like, let's sign right now and we'll go in, and then you send the invoice and then they get in, that would make me a little nervous because they have no idea what they're getting into, right? And so that I would say is a red flag. Another one is if on the call, when you're getting to know them and everything, they are talking mostly about them and their services and what they do and how great they are and all these case studies, and they're not asking you the questions and the areas of improvement you could see, the history, all of that. Because there are times where I talk to an agency or I talk to a company and they're like, we're month 6 in this agency and they still like don't have all the background because they're not asking. And so they'll try a new test. And then I say, we already did that before. Like, don't waste your time, So again, it's asking those questions. And I would say, if an agency is willing to sign you after the first call, it's probably a red flag. Now let's get into some green flags, good things. I would say good things would be if they have actual case studies of showing small budgets growing to large budgets. Some agencies are only going to show you the success of growth within brands that went from 0 budget to 5,000. Well, duh, the sales are going to grow 50%. Like that, no, right? Or if they already are spending $100,000 And now they're already starting with a huge foundation. Like, ask the questions, see the case studies of where they've actually grown year over year. Some stats that I like to ask are, when was the last, like, what's your average turnover, if you have any, and see if they get kind of nervous, if they know the answer or not. They might not actually know the answer, but it kind of gets them a little bit frazzled. But then another green flag within that conversation is asking them, when was the last brand you signed, and how many brands does a client own, right? Or sorry, does a member of their team run, right? At one point at a previous company, I ran 30. And I doubt the salesperson, if they were asked that, would have been able to say 30, like, our leader runs 30. However, you really want to ask those questions to better understand. Like, for us, it's like 4 to 8 brands max, depending on size, budget, everything like that. Like, right, that's how it is. I don't give anyone more than that no one wins. So those, I would say, would be some green flags.
For sure. Yeah, no, I think I would agree with all of those, and like another one that I would add is like, this you might not really get into until you really start working with someone, but if you're getting passed around from like agent to agent, or you don't know who's, managing your stuff, or like, I think that this person is doing my ads, but this person is, there's like, if there's a lack of communication just sort of in general, and like what feels like kind of a confusion, then I think that that's a big red flag that we see a lot of clients coming from other agencies or other, services. And that's a big one that they always call out, is like, I'm really frustrated because I don't know who's doing what, so that's another big one that I see.
Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah. And then, green flags is just kind of the opposite of all of those, right? Like, they're communicative. I really love what you said about asking you questions. Like, I mean, I've interviewed agencies for the agency, right? For other like marketing the agencies type of services. And that's always a big problem for me when it's like, I've barely even spoken on this call. You don't know anything about me. Like, how are you going to really be able to help me? So if that agency actually cares, like, if they're going to do a good job, they need to understand your business inside and out, just like you said. Yep. And so if they're doing that, that's a green flag. Like, you should be talking more than them on a call.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting, whenever I talk to brands, I always ask them, like, would you be comfortable sharing margin information, even if it's rough? I don't need, some brands like really don't want to send those details like exactly, and that's okay. Like, you do you, that's fine, but give me a range so that I actually can set clear goals for you, and I'm not getting this copy paste goal and telling you our goal is a 3 ROAS, and then you're like, well, that I'm not profitable at that level, right? I need this. So like, actually having someone like come in and ask, like, I want you to grow your top line and your bottom line. So like, I'm going to ask you some tricky questions. And so that would be a green flag. Sometimes some brands, they just don't want to share the information, so they view that as like a bad conversation or a red flag. But I would say it's actually a green flag. It's them really trying to dig in and understand. They're not trying to like get information that they shouldn't have. They can do their job best if they know what items you're more profitable on, for example.
Yeah. So, I mean, for us, that is one of the most important questions that we have to get COGS from all of our clients, because that's how we run our advertising. If we don't understand your actual contribution profit or what your margins are, we cannot run ads successfully. Like, we use your margin as our target ACoS, right? So we have, of course, worked with folks who do keep that a little bit close to the chest, and they're like not super comfortable with that. And I get it. And as long as we have something like a general ballpark, it at least, it's enough information for us to know whether or not we're successful. Because if your goal, like you said, is like a 3 ROAS, or you need like X number, X percentage of growth, like, why, what is that really doing for your actual profitability, right? Like, what's the goal behind that? And I think once you get those details is when you can actually understand that. So yeah, I would totally agree with that.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Okay, next question here from Jess. What signals do you look for to know if a campaign is ready to scale?
That's good to know. So if a campaign is ready to scale, so I'm thinking we're still within the PPC ad space. So I would say, what are the signals is I'll throw the obvious one out there so we can just kind of move that to the side. And that's, well, the ROAS is above your goal, right? That's the obvious one. Like, clearly you're making the sales and it's above your goal. So we'll move that to the side. Like that's a clear indicator. Digging into the weeds, one of the other clear indicators is a very high conversion rate. So that would, and remember, Amazon's weird. They don't just have a conversion rate metric. You have to actually do the math, right? Why? I don't know. Do you know why they do that?
I don't know if it's strategic or negligent. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have to kind of go off of, okay, how many clicks it take to get a sale? Wow, this is working really well. So clearly the keywords that are in that campaign like are working and they're ready for more. They're ready to scale. And so that's when you would either break it out and put those keywords into separate campaigns. That's when you would increase budgets. If you already have, do budgets first, bids second, right? Make sure that campaign is maxing out its daily budget, then do bids, or moving those keywords into now a broad match, which I know can scare people because they're like, no, it's like working well with an exact. Well, why is it working? It's because that's the exact audience. So what if you put that, you know, that 4-word long tail keyword into a broad match campaign? Could we get double the amount of converting keywords in that? So that's where like that expansion would happen. For me, it's in like those high conversion. So like keywords that are working really well. And the other thing is to know when a campaign is ready to scale is also a matter of search volume growth too. So if you have, if like seasonality, right? So we're now moving into, you know, maybe we're moving into the fall, back to school, new shoe season. Like, you know, that is a signal outside of the campaign, but that is a signal that it is ready to scale the campaigns that are working well for you. That would be another signal.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with all of that. And I think another thing I just want to expand on that you said is looking at the search terms within that campaign. Because what is a campaign but the search terms that it's made up of?
Yep.
So maybe the question should really be around when is a search term ready to scale, right? And that kind of thing too, and getting a little bit more granular in there. So yeah, totally agree on that.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Okay, next question. What's your current approach to launching a new ASIN with PPC? So this is a great question. I think there's a lot to kind of unpack here with a launch, but I'm curious how you guys approach launches.
Yeah. So I'm going to share 2 different approaches. That's 4. 2 different approaches. One being right when you launch, you have 0 reviews. Okay. So whether it's FBA, FBM, I don't really care. You have 0 reviews. Your item is not ready for high conversion. So your, in my opinion, your marketing spend should be put towards Vine review generation, trying to get to what the last piece that you typically need for that conversion. And then a very simple auto campaign, very, very low bid, because you can't compete against the top of search like competitors. You can't compete very well. And I don't want to waste any money. So that's kind of how I would put that marketing approach. Once you've reached the point of just 5 reviews is what I say. It'd be nice if it was 10, 15, 20, but you got 5 reviews, 4.2 or above. Like, okay, now we're cranking. Now you have Vine reviews going, you have customer reviews generating. That is when I would say you do more of that full funnel advertising approach. And my recommendation is that you do an auto campaign, low bid, to get those keywords that are like, just like what the big guys aren't looking at. The big guys are focused on the main keywords, like get that kind of low hanging fruit, the hopefully 4 to 6 ROAS, not higher placements, very low bid there. And I would set a daily budget of like $10 to $15, nothing crazy, because that's what we call a catch-all campaign, right? You put in your keyword, and then you do an exact match and a broad magnifier campaign. That's what I call them. So the exact matches, I did the keyword research within Amazon, Jungle Scout, Helium 10. I know the top keywords that I want, 10 to 15 is what I would start with. I put those into an exact match campaign. And when I say the keywords that you want, they're the ones with a high search volume, high sales potential, right? So not like vitamin, but like, you know, vitamin D for kids, like some of those keywords that like, you're like, this is exactly what my item is, and I want to convert on it. You pick 10 to 15, put it into that campaign, fairly low bid, work your way up, right? And then same thing, $10 to $15 a day budget, work your way up as it goes. And then that broad magnifier campaign. So that's where you do, I always do broad magnifiers. I don't know about you, where you do a broad match, but you do like the keyword plus the next keyword plus the next keyword to help eliminate some of that noise. And I would do a broad magnifier campaign on those keywords as well, because that will help expand your reach for a much lower CPC. Broad matches tend to be a lower CPC, so it's allowing you to learn within the realm you've created. It's like in between an auto and an exact match campaign, right? You're learning within that realm. And again, $10 to $15 a day budget is what I do. And always start with low bids and then move your budget first. If you're running out of budget, move your budget first, then your bid. That was kind of a lot, but that's how I would recommend starting. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, how you typically start.
Yeah, no, I think that we take a fairly similar approach, like starting low and then going high, I think is the way to do it, especially when you're kind of waiting for reviews to come in and all of that, because all of that matters. And like you said, you don't want to get started and dumping money into PPC if kind of like it's not ready, right? It's kind of like if the store is still under construction, you don't want your customers coming in, right? Not exactly. Like you need customers to come in, you need to beef up those reviews and ratings and all of that, but until you get like a decent amount of traction, like you said, like at least, you got to be doing your Vine. And I even advise people sometimes just wait until you get like all that you're going to get from Vine. Like if it's 30 or slightly, just depending on what budgets look like and like risk aversion, basically, you might even wait until you have that kind of in place and set up and kind of proven your concept a little bit more until you then turn PPC on. But it depends. And then in terms of our campaign structure, so we'll do what we call our farming campaigns. I feel like everybody has like a cute little name for their stuff. But so basically our discovery campaigns, we do broad match, we do category targeting, and then what we call our full auto, which is where we have like an auto campaign with a higher bid with the intention of search term discovery. Okay. And then basically we don't put anything into our exec campaigns until they've been sort of discovered. So we don't want to take bets on keywords, even that we know are maybe not proven to convert for that product. So we have a software that's automatically harvests everything. So it's a very quick process, right? Once you have anything that anything that has a conversion, right? That's our marker. Anything that has a conversion, we move those over and do exact or what we call like our product targeting ads, right? So if it's an ASIN target instead of a keyword target. And that's how we do really, whether it's a launch or even like a relaunch, right? Sometimes when you're taking on a new client, right, and they have a low target count, right? They don't have a lot happening in PPC, or they've been kind of betting it all on black and betting it all on one keyword, that you need to sort of do a relaunch and do more discovery to really kind of get them off the ground and expand their reach. And so we'll do that same process, whether it's a brand new product launch or sort of like a relaunch.
Awesome. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Next question. We just have a few folks here today. It looks like not a super full house, but that's okay. We've got some good questions coming in. So how do you analyze the effect of PPC on the product lifecycle? Or kind of maybe the way I'm thinking about this is like, how do you manage maybe like budgets and strategy throughout a product lifecycle?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So we already talked about when we launch a product, kind of what that strategy should look like, and potential budgets that really are flexible based on how quick you want to learn. More budget, you learn faster, you grow faster, right? So we kind of talked about like that launch stage. Now it's talking about product lifecycle as termed from, now they're a little more sophisticated. What do we do with PPC when they're even more sophisticated? What do we do? So I would say your learning phase. It's hard. I could say it's 3 months long. I could say it's 6 months long. It really just depends on the amount of spend you're willing to put at it. When you get to a point where I would say you're now profitable, so you're breaking even, your advertising spend, because at the beginning you just sent in a bunch of inventory, you just started advertising. Like once you reach the point where at least you're break even, now we're talking about profit numbers, now we're talking about scaled growth. You've moved from that launch phase to that, okay, now we're in hyper growth mode phase. And we know what we're going to lean in with. And so that's where we do the like push the campaigns that are working really heavily, A/B test the conversion, the titles, like everything having to do with images. Like that's where kind of that piece comes in. And the goal within those PPC campaigns is still, profitably growing and leaning into campaigns that are working. So that would be how we would kind of pivot the strategy there, and analyzing like the performance of that is going to be, are they hitting the new goals we've now set, the new KPIs that we've now set? And once they hit those, then it's the next phase. The one thing that I wanted to add to this, though, is if a product's life cycle is like you buy it once and you're done, you need to be a little more careful, with your advertising. So like more premium items like a mattress or things like that. You want the consumer to buy once, you want them to love it and write a review. And you kind of don't want them to buy another one again unless you're buying it for someone else. And so you need to think about that too when you create everything and you set your KPIs is what is the customer acquisition cost that you're comfortable with, and that's how you adjust your ads, as opposed to like a supplement where some people are like, I'm okay losing money on the first sale if they convert to subscribe and save, because then that totally pivots the strategy and the view of a product life cycle to totally change that strategy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. There's kind of like two life cycles. There's like the macro life cycle and then like almost like the purchase life cycle of a product, right? So there's kind of like a macro and micro level, I think, answer to that. And so there's like, it depends on your product. So I think you made a really good point, like of understanding the product really well before you can really determine what the strategy is, right? So for example, we work with a lot of brands who do private label, and some of those products, they kind of have a built-in termination, right? There's going to be a time when the market gets so flooded and you're no longer able to compete on price that you do need to kill that product, and that's okay. These brands, they know that, and that's sort of built into the strategy. And so it has like a very clear kind of bell curve, right? So we'll do a launch, we'll get in lots of sales, we reach a peak, and then it's kind of maintenance, and then it kind of is going to start to drop off as the market sort of realizes that this is a profitable niche, and more it's going to get flooded, and you're probably going to start to ring down as you're no longer able to compete on price and things like that. Like that can happen with especially kind of the like copycat kind of products, right? Like, oh, we're also selling this same spoon off the shelf private label kind of thing, right? And so in those cases, right, like we already talked about the launch, and then once the sort of determining factor for us when we move from learning or launch phase into maintenance is basically, do we have enough keywords, right? Like, have we sort of reached the end of have we found the most profitable keywords for us kind of thing? And so, or for that specific ASIN. And there's two ways we can cut that off. The first way is if the cost per new customer search term exceeds the profit of that product, right? So if that cost is getting too high and we're not cool with continuing to go in the red on that, like we're good, then that's obviously a signal to cut that off. But then the other one is if, because you'll notice, right, when you first launch those discovery campaigns, you're getting a ton of search terms, and then it starts to taper off, and then so the kind of frequency of new search term acquisition falling off is the other sort of signal that, okay, now it's time to let's shut down those discovery campaigns. Now we're in the maintenance phase, and it's all about, efficiency, right? And then of course you can redo discovery campaigns, like you said, during different seasons if it makes sense for your product, right? I think that's a smart thing to do. And then, realizing, and then you start getting into when you're sort of on the downside of that bell curve, like, okay, we're already ranking for top of search. Like, let's pull back on top of search. Let's go after these other placements, right? Or like, if you do need to do more awareness, then you're getting into more your sponsored brand, sponsored display, like those kinds of things, right? Happen like once you're starting to see things fall off on the other side of that bell curve. I guess is kind of how I would think about product lifecycle. But I think to your point, you need to understand the product really well in order to come up with a good strategy for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
For sure. Okay, next question. What do most people misunderstand about Amazon, how the auction works? Are there specific instances when you've struggled to change a client's misconceptions? I have some stories on this. I'm sure you do too, especially maybe even back from Pattern. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the Amazon ad auction, because I manage the full account for brands, I would say I haven't had a lot of questions around that and people's misconceptions. So you probably have more there. So I'm going to lean on you for that, because I'm sure have that conversation every day with people, and I do not. But on the instances where you struggle to change a client's misconceptions, every day, all the time. But I would say the misconceptions that I deal with more so is that one is spending more leads to more sales, or the lower the ROAS, or sorry, the higher the ROAS, the more sales you should get. Those are both wrong. So the first one being spending more. It's only going to work if you're spending more on growth related ventures and growth related keywords. Spending more on branded is going to make your ROAS look really great, but it's not going to change anything in terms of your total sales. So like spending more can only work if it's in the right places. A lot of times when we sign brands, I actually cut their budget in half because a lot of it was going into just like the wasted stuff. So I cut it in half and the sales like don't move. And then the problem with that is though, they're like, oh, well then we don't have to spend that much. And it's like, no. The goal was to tell you that, hey, this is the amount you need to maintain what you had based on what we were doing. Now, can we get that money back, please? And here's where I'm going to put it. I'm going to put it in all these different ventures that are focused on growth, that are, the category targeting, the product targeting, the sponsored brands, the display remarketing, like all of those things that brands that the agency prior maybe wasn't trying out. That's that one. And the second one being like always saying, well, I need a ROAS of a 6. When a brand comes to me and say, okay, we love what you're doing, everything, just know we need a ROAS of a 6. And for me, it's like, okay, well, why? Let's do the math. Is that like, is your margin only gonna work if that's how you do? Like, we have to go through the math and say yes, because yeah, I can get you a ROAS of a 6, sure, but I want to do it through as much new customer acquisition awareness tactics as possible. And if you give me this thing where I need a 6, at the end of the day, all that does is tell me and my team we need to spend a lot more on keywords that you were probably already going to convert on. And that makes me feel icky and gross, and what a waste of ad spend. So I'd rather have a conversation where it's like, look, based on all this data we're pulling, all these reviews, this is where I think you should be. Maybe it's a 4.2 or something. And how can we work together to better understand that this is actually a profitable ROAS for you, and this is where growth happens, and that at a 6 ROAS, you're actually missing out on opportunity because we're spending on keywords that are already working for you organically. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So we do the same. That is actually one of the things that we touch on in our audit is we actually recommend not doing any brand defense, which I know is extreme. And I do think there's some cases where it's warranted and necessary, right? But we find that when we turn that branded spend off, all that does is shift that revenue over into the organic column, which is exactly what you want, right? So that's a big one, which again doesn't really have much, not specific to the ad auction, but I think it's a big question around ads and like what people think ads can do, right, for a brand. And so I think there's a time and a place for brand defense, but the majority of the time, I think that brands can cut back dramatically on it. And I think that's another red flag for an agency if you kind of pull back the curtain and you realize, well, this is just brand defense and retargeting ads, like there's nothing actually, happening here that is, like you said, new growth or actually like expansion and real sales. So totally agree with you on that. And, another one, which I think you touched on, is like that you can just pay to rank, because that's just not really going to, there's only one ASIN that's going to be number one, right? And you may or may not actually, your product may not deserve to have that rank. You might not have, you're not competitive on price. You don't have as many ratings and reviews as the other guy. Like, I know that you know how great your product is, but unfortunately, like, the rest of the world doesn't. And we can only do so much, right, with advertising to a certain point, that you can't just pay to rank. And we've seen it a lot of times where a brand still wants to try it and we dump a bunch of money into it and we temporarily can rank them up on a certain keyword, right? But as soon as we pull that spend back, it just drops right back down. And so it's just not a sustainable approach, I think, to using PPC. And so I think the better approach is getting that big portfolio of long tail keywords where you are able to sustainably rank and consistently rank a lot higher, but for lower search volume terms, right? For a lot of brands. I mean, sometimes, you end up dominating a really high search volume term, which is amazing, and you see huge growth, but like that is really the exception rather than the rule. And I know that a lot of people try to sell that as kind of like the fantasy, and it can happen. It does happen, but
I was gonna say that. Well, that's also often the case study that you're shown in your meeting with the agency. It's the big brand that, well, they didn't tell you that they already had 3 million followers on TikTok. Wait, that's not in that. That's not in the case study. Like there's things like that where it's like, maybe we should have found a more authentic case study to share.
Yeah, that's a super good point, because I think that, like a lot of those products or those brands that you see in those top spots, they're not just on Amazon, and they're not just doing Amazon ads, right? They're on TikTok, they're doing Google ads, they have their own Shopify store, they've got a huge, social media like influencer campaign running, so like to think that you can compete with them, like you need to just kind of just do a little soul searching, be a little realistic about what your goals are, right? So maybe you can't compete on vitamin D, but you can compete on vitamin D for kids, tablets, whatever, right? And you can still have a good business and you can still make a profit there. But I think just kind of being realistic about like what your goals are. And I mean, I know that's a hard conversation to have because everybody, when they set out on Amazon, they want to set out to be that number one spot. They want to set out to make millions, and it's absolutely possible. But I think, just understanding the relationship between PPC and rank and PPC and organic, all of that, I think is there's a lot of misconceptions out there about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
For sure. Okay, next question. What solutions do you give your clients when growth appears to be capped or you're unable to grow despite increased spend or exposure? Like, I mean, we've definitely, this is not the glamorous case study, right? We definitely have had clients we've taken on where it's like, look, the market has spoken kind of thing, So how do you approach that?
Yeah, so typically the moment that I see this within a brand, and like we've done the whole testing of, increasing the budget, trying to rerun discovery and expand, and it's like there's a select number of keywords people are searching in this space. Typically that's where I then have the conversation of, one, what's the new new product horizon look like for you guys? Like, are you still going to stay within this tiny subcategory, for example, or are we adding new items? Because by adding new items, you then get a whole new customer market by trying your stuff, who will then want to tap into the new stuff, help the old stuff, helping the other items grow and stuff. So I always ask, like, what's the next 12 months in terms of new product launch look like? Because that might be one avenue. And then another piece within still the Amazon ecosphere is, okay, well, outside of PPC, what are the next steps, right? So of course there's a listing. If you're already done a listing audit and your listing looks gorgeous and has the great conversion rate, yeah, like if you're hitting all of that, but for whatever reason increased traffic isn't working, that's where I kind of lean into like the creator connections and the influencer stuff. Can we drive the off-platform traffic? Have you used the Amazon attribution link, and have you been like doing the brand referral bonus and like trying to bring people from your your Instagram, people from your store, your email list that you haven't, that for the people who haven't bought in the past year, like resurfacing that and sending them to Amazon. Like that's kind of where the more creative kind of mind has to come to play. And so that's what I would do. And the other thing I think about is case packs. It's sometimes like you kind of hit your cap on one, but the keywords for bulk in your section are actually pretty good. Could you just make that item a case pack? Add 3, add 6, add 12, lean into the like Amazon like B2B business space and try and get those type of consumers. Because that can actually increase the revenue quite a bit, and even your profitability, because sometimes it is cheaper for you to actually sell 3 at one time than 1 every 3 months. And so that's kind of where that creativity, I would say, would come into play, is can you maximize the current audience, and how could you tap a totally new audience into your current item?
Yeah, I think those are great recommendations. I love the pack size thing. I think that's a super simple fix that is often overlooked. And it also can get you into volume discounts on your inventory if you're having to buy twice as much in order to do, larger pack sizes, which could be really advantageous for margins. So I love that suggestion. I think that's a great one. Another thing is just go and look at all your reviews and what are people saying. Your customers can often give you ideas for how to improve and even alternative use cases for your product that you may not have been marketing it for. Like, we had a product where it's like deli paper, like, when you go and get a basket of French fries and there's like a piece of kind of wax paper in there or whatever to protect it from the grease. Well, marketing it obviously as deli paper for concession stands and whatever, but in the reviews, a lot of people had been using it for origami paper. And so that was not something that was on our radar at all. And, we added it to the listing, and I wouldn't say it was like a huge uplift, but it brought in more sales, right? So, so I think that can be kind of a place for untapped potential.
Yeah.
Like, what are your customers saying? And like, is there an opportunity for you to either to pivot the product, change something about it, or maybe change the way you're marketing
I also think that it's sometimes hard to talk to the brand, but sometimes it's like, okay, we need to look at competitors.
Yeah.
We need to also kind of, humble ourselves and say, what are all the negative things within our product, right? And can we fix those, for one, to increase those reviews? But you're never the only one selling your item. You could be the only one selling your item in that certain form, maybe, but like, who are the other 10 or 20 or 30 selling your item, and how are they selling it and using it to give you that creativity? I also had a brand that was like a nose cleaner, and I was like, well, can it clean your ears? And they were like, I don't know. I'm like,
Yeah.
we should try, because nose and ear, could we try? They're like, well, let's try it. Turns out it can clean your ear. So then we added that. And yeah, it started as a nose cleaner, but if it can clean your ear as well, there's a whole list of new keywords now. Back end, front end, advertising. And so that should continue to happen. What I will say is, if your item can, like, I was talking to one brand, and their item is like a sore throat thing, and they also said it can cure your acne. Now that is a stretch, and that's cool. That's a stretch. Now telling someone this item can help your sore throat and clear up your acne, you're talking about oral and then topical. So it's like, okay, well, now that item, get a new label, do that test. Don't get too creative and then think you should say this is a sore throat and acne remover. Like, that is just two totally different categories. It sounds like a great way to get shut down, because everyone's like, what the heck is this item, right? But you never know. Some items like can be super diverse, and so let's expand into that. And maybe it actually is a way to create a whole new, same formula, but a whole new bottle, label, whole new item from something you already had created. So that's kind of where that fun creativity can come into play.
Oh, I love that. That's a great example. And yeah, like, just remembering that, like, the functional fixedness of your product is something that you can play around with. And it's like kind of the beauty of Amazon is you can just create that new listing, right? So another example that popped in my mind when you said that, we had a product. It's like like a tabletop organizer, or like a bathroom countertop organizer. It's literally the same product, but we have a listing where we market it towards men as a cologne organizer and towards women as a cosmetics organizer. Like, it's like different keywords, different listing, different kind of objectives in there, but literally the same product. Funny because like the one for women has a much higher return rate than the one for it's literally the same.
Is it separate SKUs sent into FBA as separate?
Yeah, separate SKUs.
How does that work?
Separate SKUs. It's
same
product,
same item created,
because
SKU.
like, according to Amazon and the audience, they're different products, and the images are different, right? The vibe of the marketing and everything is different, but it's like from the supplier, it's the same thing.
So here, this is a green flag, is people like us telling you how to be creative, instead of saying like, sorry, you kind of capped it out. Like, you have to launch a new product, or you have to now do this, like, and then you think, well, I got to jump to, new product and do all this research. It's like, yes, but also like, let's sit, let's like talk for like an hour or two. How can we be more creative? Like, I think it's a good sign that you're talking to people really intelligent, creative, who really want to help you grow, and you're not just a number
and taking it from the data too. Like, I would never just suggest something like, I mean, sometimes you just need to try to throw stuff against the wall, but like, what are your search terms saying, right? Like I said, what are reviews saying, right? And using that as kind of a jumping off point, I think is the way to go a little bit more safely in there, especially when there is a lot involved with, like, it's not as easy as just like, let's launch a new product, right? I mean, that's involved, so looking at the data too, but yeah, absolutely. Green flag for sure. Okay. All right. Next question here. What's one thing you do in your Amazon ads that's different from most people? Something others might not expect, or like what's like kind of your unique, I don't know if you have any hacks or anything like that you think other people think it's less common in your advertising.
Yeah. Let me think. If you have one right away, feel free to go ahead. Let me think.
Okay, I do have one that I think is I mean, it's not like we're the only people doing this, but I think it's a little bit less common in people's kind of like typical strategies. So we have campaigns separate for each placement. So we do a top of search, a rest of search, and a product pages campaign within our sponsored products, which I just saw placements are now available for sponsored brands. So that's interesting. And I just saw that today.
Wow.
So that's new. But we do have for sponsored products, and we put the maximum bid multiplier in that campaign. So our base bids are like 2 cents, 3 cents, 4 cents, but then we have a 900% multiplier, which I know sounds extreme, but if you do the math, like your cost per click is still going to be like $1, right? Or $1.50. And what that does is forces all of the traffic, all of the performance to that specific placement. So when you have your 900% multiplier top of search, if you go in and look at that campaign, you have 99% of your impressions and everything going to that specific placement. It helps us to get really granular on, like, for example, if we do have a client that they're dominating top of search already and they don't want their ads showing up next to their organic result, we can turn that off, for example, on a specific search term, right? And just do rest of search and product pages for that specific ASIN, things like that. So that's kind of our everybody, and it works really well. And it's something that's like I'm confident to say, is proven.
Yeah. I remember when that launched. It was, I don't know, it was 2021 or something. And that was like when everyone was kind of leaning into that. That's not everyone, I guess, like the top, 5% of us were leaning into that strategy. I think it can work really, really well. We also do a similar strategy. We don't typically do like separate campaigns for it, but we'll do like a top of search campaign and then like everything else, sometimes in a different campaign. But we'll do low bids and 800%, 900% sometimes top of search for sure. I want to say one thing that I don't do, that I don't recommend. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it. One thing that we don't do is I do not believe in having 300 campaigns and each of them having one keyword in it. I do not love that. I do not believe that strategy works anymore. It worked really well at one point within the algorithm. Like, it did work insanely well. I will do it for a short list of keywords where I'm like, I want to spend X amount of dollars on this keyword. Like, these are the top ones, like the big, like vitamin D, self-tan, or like those big ones. I'll have a separate campaign just for that to control the budget. But when I go into an audit campaign account has 300 to 500 ASIN level, I'm like, well, they're using a tech somehow. They have to like manage that. And a lot of the performance that I see is like a one row as in total. And it's because a lot of wasted spend. There's not a lot of negatives. It's just hard to manage. So that's one thing that I don't do that I know a lot of people do. I don't know. I would get your thoughts. Do you guys do that?
I am with you. So I can see the advantage from a budget perspective, like you said, because sometimes, it's always the 80-20 rule. Your budget's going to go like 80% of your budget's going to 20% of your keywords, right? Like, that's kind of normal. And if you are like budget, constrained and all your budget is just getting funneled into one keyword, it might make sense to break that out and do its own campaign so you can be more granular with the budget. But as a rule, we do not do that. I think it, like you said, it's not easy to manage and it gets out of control really quick. And there is, I will not name names, but there's one agency in particular we get a lot of clients from, and I see this and I see how frustrated clients are with it as well, especially like because naming conventions are really just like for a computer and not for a human, and it's very difficult to manage. And I think that it's very difficult to manage well. Again, I see the advantages with being able to control budget based on the keyword, but I don't really see it being beneficial for the vast majority of cases. So I'm with you. I don't think it's necessary, and I think it gets very unwieldy very quickly.
Yeah. I would say like the thing that I would say we do most differently, and it could be because we manage the full account, so we have all the data, is we actually don't do like 75% plus of the budget into sponsored products. Like, that's what most everyone does. And then they do like 20% sponsored brands and then 5% over sponsored display. I would say we're much closer to like that 50% sponsored products and like 30% sponsored display. I'm like obsessed with display. I think like that's where you have all the targeting options. Like, that's where you have the retargeting, the remarketing off of purchasers, off of like viewed. Like, you don't have that capability. And then within like sponsored like product targeting, you have more placements in the display. You can add video to display, a lifestyle image in the ad. Like you have way more of that control there. And the cost per click is nice graphic in terms of like market share and like share of voice and that visibility if you lean more into the display ventures. And Amazon tends to give free credits for a lot of that spend there, which is nice, as opposed to just spending everything within sponsored products, which is like what 99.9% of everyone does. It's like, well, why don't we spend more where people aren't spending? It's way cheaper and we can get the visibility. And so that, in my opinion, is how we get more traffic to the listings in a very low cost way. And then it's all about keyword targeting sponsored products for conversion. So I would say that's what we do most differently. It's just way more spend on the display.
Interesting.
Option.
Yeah, like we do tend to fall in the category of spending majority on sponsored products just because it is more bottom of funnel. We see in our experience better returns there. But I'm super curious, what is your kind of like what's your favorite sponsored display kind of setup, or like what do you usually go for? You mentioned some of the retargeting, like what's your go-to?
Yeah, I mean, so we'll do views remarketing.
Yeah.
So if anyone's viewed the detail page, just like people do on like social media, like I think of it the same way, right? Like you view the D2C site and you go to Facebook and it's all over your screen. It's like that same strategy. Like they view the Amazon detail page, and then when they're searching for other stuff, I want it all over your screen, right? So I do it for a lot of like, okay, if anyone has bought our top seller, which for most brands is like 50% plus of their sales is their top seller. If anyone's bought their top seller, I want them to now see all the other items in the carousel. So like they can learn more about the brand and we can increase that loyalty. So I do a lot of like that type of strategy. Creating within sponsored display has been more effective than in sponsored products, but it really depends on the brand. That's not true for all of the brands that I've worked with. Yeah. But again, you have that reach, and it's a different placement. It's like right under the buy box. Like it's like such an ideal placement. And then of course I do that for defense, right? For every defense, for every brand, you should have sponsored display defense. But I would say those are kind of like the key ones we do. Now, if your budget is constrained, you have to do sponsored brands. Yeah. And then as it expands and you think about more traffic, sponsored brands does make sense because it takes you to the brand store. Like all those things make sense. So this strategy is typically if you're wanting to be super creative and different with little budget, or when you have the budget and you're like, what's next? It's like sponsored display all the way is my personal opinion.
Very cool. Yeah, no, I love it. That's awesome. Okay. Next question here. Maybe our last one. We'll see. How do you extract value from poor performing search terms without negating them? So if you've got a search term that's not going well, how do you handle it?
Yeah. So from a poor performing search term without simply negating them. Well, my first thought is, well, pull the search term report. Is it broad? Is it phrase? Right? Because if it's broad or phrase, then you go in and, well, what's the main keyword driving that low broad conversion? Oh, it's because I'm serving on the word vitamin for dog, and this item's not for dogs. Oh, forgot to negative it. Right? Happens all the time. So things like that, like don't just turn it off. Go in and see what's happening. And then I would say the typical next step would be to look at like the bid adjustment multiplier, like where's all your set spend going? So like, why is the search term not working? Is it because it's on product pages or rest of search and it should be top of search? Or is it because it's serving for top of search and it shouldn't because you only have 2 reviews? Like look at dig into that. And then I think the natural next step without turning it off is honestly simply just cutting the bid in half and seeing what happens. Because sometimes it's a matter of I have my bid at $1 and I'm converting, but I'm not converting profitably at $1. But I like that I'm serving top of search. But if I decrease it to bidding 50 cents, I'm going to get most of my visibility in the evenings when people's budgets have run out. And I'm actually converting at the same rate. But because I'm bidding 50 cents, my conversion is higher. Or sorry, my ROAS is higher, right? So I would say those are kind of like the typical steps.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my go-to here would be digging into it. What time frame are you looking at? Like, how are you determining what is poor performance? Is that based on it like a bad ACoS? Like you said, I know people use keywords and search terms pretty interchangeably. They are different, right? So if we're talking about a search term specifically here, then going in, what time frame are you looking at? How are you determining what is poor performance, and then bid adjustments is the first thing I would do before just going after negating them. I think that people sometimes use negation a little bit too loosely and can end up, negating a keyword or a search term that is going to potentially work for you, just in a different way at a different bid, right? That's kind of how I would approach this.
Yeah, I think also like if your product seasonal, just be careful too. Especially like any like holiday specific items, or if you really lean it, if you're like very heavy into the early time of year, whatever, you're naturally going to have a drop in performance because of the lower conversions and like traffic. So make sure you account for that in your strategy. Decrease your bids and budgets, if not turn them off, just depending on if it's Halloween decor. Maybe don't serve ads in March. I don't know, it's up to you. But like, really decrease, because you don't want to then add those keywords as negatives. And then when those keywords are mature and ready with the traffic, you're not serving on them. But if you're not seasonal, you're just more like, vitamin supplement all year round. That's where like, okay, well, let's look at a wider date range. Like, it has just been this past month that it's not working. What happened to the detail page? There's a little more digging there. So while you're doing that digging, the easiest thing to do is decrease your bid while you figure that out, just to conserve the budget right away while you're still digging in, because this might not be like a answer you find right away.
Right. Yeah. Seasonality is a big one there for sure. And again, that comes back to really knowing the product and understanding what you're doing, right? So making sure either you or whoever you're working with is like on that, because you can definitely, how horrible would that be to negate something that is a seasonal term, and then like you said, you're not delivering on it when the season hits. Like that's gonna tank your whole operation there. So yeah, super good call out.
Totally.
Cool. Well, I think that probably wraps it up for today. I don't see any other questions coming through. So yeah, anything else that you want to tell us about the agency? Anything else you got going on that you want to plug?
We're growing. We're signing good brands. I'm really happy with the way we've grown. Right now, the focus is basically Black Friday and like prepping for that. I know it's only August. You're like, it's only August. Like, yeah, but you better send inventory by end of month or you might be screwed. So like, be planning that now and going through, the search terms, the search volume that happened last year. You can expect probably a little bit of growth this year, just based on more people shopping online. So like, just make sure that you're really strategic in that way. And then also don't forget, October Prime is a thing. It's going to be coming, most likely, pretty confident.
Probably, yeah.
So like, also make sure you're prepping for that. And I think in the future, we should have a whole discussion about pricing strategy, because I have a lot of brands that will in October discount super heavily, and then they're no longer qualified for deals for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So they have to just do like slash prices. You know what I mean? Because of the date range, sometimes you have to have for holiday the lowest price in the past 90 days. Well, July Prime Day is at least 90 days before, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but October Prime Day is not. So you got to be really careful there. So but because of that, there's also going to be less brands leaning into the deals in October. So how can you maximize that? So there's a whole kind of strategy there that I would just recommend you really dig in and plan for now. Do the inventory analysis, send in what you can to just make sure you're really capitalizing on that, and that momentum in October can like lead you to a really, really great Turkey 5.
That's super good advice. And I think a lot of people kind of after Prime Day, they're sort of still catching their breath even at this point and not necessarily gearing up for Q4 yet, but absolutely should be.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tana. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon. Thanks again.
Okay. Yeah. See ya. Thanks, everyone.